The biggest news events, the stories in our community, understood. It's Pamela McCall on CFAX 1070.
Good morning. Heed the UN's call for climate action. The message to the province coming from the Sierra Club of BC. Joining me this morning is forest and climate campaigner for the Sierra Club, Jens Wieding. Good morning, Jens.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me to talk about climate change and climate action.
I appreciate you being on. What is the United Nations calling for urgently when it comes to climate action?
Well, Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, asked the international community, heads of state, to attend a special climate summit in New York this coming Tuesday because there's a very important climate summit coming up in 2015 in Paris, and he is seeking new commitments, new far-reaching commitments from a number of countries to lay the groundwork and help to inspire hope and action for an international agreement, a binding agreement, a meaningful agreement to tackle global warming.
You've written an article recently, 3 reasons why global warming requires a full stop for new tar sands pipelines and tankers. Tell us about that.
Indeed, the most important reason is that we have to consider the most important recommendation coming from the climate scientists. It's about we have a limited remaining carbon pollution budget. We have to consider these dangerous thresholds, and that means there's no room to build new fossil fuel infrastructure. We have to reduce, not increase, dangerous carbon pollution. And there are 3 reasons why we have to look at tar sands pipelines in particular. Number 1, they will increase the carbon pollution. Number 2, we are already faced with dangerous climate impacts. And these climate impacts, for example, landslides, storms, floods, fires, will make these projects even more dangerous than they were already in the first place. So, for example, landslides can destroy or damage pipelines. We will see more extreme weather events, more storms, which will cause a higher risk for sinking tankers, and so on. The third reason is that we will also see more and more places that we need for clean air, for clean water, and to grow food impacted by dangerous climate change. We already have this very serious drought in California. We are seeing more fires, and that means that these places become more precious, more scarce, and we have to take a closer look at the risks of pollution from dirty fossil fuel projects like tar sands pipelines. We cannot afford to lose these places that we need for clean air, clean water, to grow our food along our coast and along the proposed pipeline routes inland to catastrophic oil pollution.
Have we lost this fight? Is it too late? When we have front page of the Globe and Mail, the new Premier of Alberta talking about, energy plans. There's all this oil sitting there and they want to get it out. And we have a way for them to do that. Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline coming up just after the 11 o'clock news. We're going to be talking about Kinder Morgan.
Right. Well, it's not too late because the solutions exist and they are abundantly clear. There's a massive progress looking at renewable energy, energy efficiency, transit. Costs are decreasing very fast. For example, electricity from photovoltaic solar cells the cost is now equal or cheaper than other sources in 79 countries. So essentially every day it's becoming cheaper to produce electricity and to create jobs from renewable energy like solar and wind. And there's also more and more support for climate action internationally. So we are becoming more isolated in Canada with our federal government, ignoring climate change, not taking it seriously, allowing a 300% increase of carbon pollution from the tar sands between 1990 and 2012. That's a very dangerous development, and that's why we are calling on the provincial government to step up to the plate, represent British Columbians internationally, and make new commitments to fight climate change and stop pipelines.
Right. Well, you've got three things that you're asking, and that includes stop issuing permits for building new fossil fuel infrastructure, including coal mines, LNG terminals, and new oil and gas pipelines. What do you say to the people who are planning to make money and work at this and put money into provincial coffers?
Well, we are spending massive amounts of taxpayers' money to subsidize fossil fuel industries, and we can use that to create clean energy jobs. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, there was a 14% jobs growth in 2013 in renewable energy. We have now globally 6.5 million people working in the renewable energy sector. In the European Union alone, over 1 million jobs, and there's a massive growth in these energy forms. And it's very threatening for the fossil fuel companies, actually. It's becoming cheaper to produce electricity from renewable energy. In the future, our cars, our transit will be powered by renewable energy. And I think that's the reason why there's so much resistance within industry and so much support with the current government to protect the oil companies and big business, because they are scared. They will lose markets, and we have to make sure that we increase the pressure, because change will come one way or the other, and we have to make sure that this change will happen in a timely manner.
Jens, I want to bring some listeners in here. Hi, Jeff. You're on CFAX 1070.
Hi.
What do you think?
I don't know. I just think we're so ingrained in North America and in Europe to using the car that I see it hard for people to give that up or reduce that. And also, I was wondering, what about countries like China, where the demand is increasing and their air pollution and air quality is like some of the worst in the world? Like, because if they start coming online and getting demands like we have in North America, that's going to spell real trouble, especially with their emerging middle-class population.
Mm-hmm. And potentially with our oil. Thanks, Jeff. Jens, your response.
Well, it's really important for the rich industrialized countries to show leadership, because we have this historic responsibility. We have had a fantastic development over several decades, causing massive carbon pollution, and we now have the alternatives, and we still have very high per capita emissions. Looking at the per capita responsibility, the Chinese, the people in countries like India, they still see a lot of room for themselves to develop. They're open-minded to make commitments to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels, but many people in these countries think it's unfair if countries like Canada, the US, Europeans are not taking stronger action first to reduce their high per capita emissions. Well,
Greg brings up a good point here. How about the Canada-China FIPA, the trade deal? Is that not the nail in the coffin regarding our control over these projects? China could sue us. They have a lot of investment in the tar sands. I'll just bet this is Mr. Harper's out.
It's a very dangerous project, and we're very concerned about the process, how it got ratified, and we have to explore all available means to stop it. I don't know if this is possible, but this is a clear failure in process and democracy, and we really have to make sure that we increase the pressure on pipelines, on mechanisms that could protect investment in these pipelines. One particular reason is that once a pipeline or other fossil fuel infrastructure is built, there's an expectation from the investor to make profit over several decades. But we have to expect serious climate action, and that will mean that there will be a point when some of these projects will be shut down because of carbon pollution. and because of the need to meet emission reduction targets, and then we don't want to be on the hook to pay compensation to investors or other countries.
China that can sue. Hi, Ron, you're on CFAX. Quick thoughts, sir.
Yes, thank you. The NDP about a year ago had a motion opposing this sellout of Canadian sovereignty. The Liberals voted with the Conservatives. Is there any hope that Trudeau and company will wake up?
Jens, we're talking, Ron's referring to FIPA again.
Right.
And I think, Ron, Jens was saying, you guys are looking into it. Now that it's ratified, what can be done? Is that your point there, Ron?
Yeah, but I mean, are we going to get Trudeau to wake up to the issues?
Thanks, Jens.
I think we have to work very hard to remind all our leaders, all parties, about the need to enforce climate action, and FIPA could become a real obstacle to do this. So it will depend on us. The short answer is it will depend on us, Canadians, British Columbians. Increase the pressure. Let our leaders know, everyone, that we don't want these mechanisms that will protect investors and make it harder to enforce climate action.
How can the BC government do this? It sounds like you've thrown up your hands at the federal government, and now you're looking at the BC government. How can they affect the kind of change that you're asking for?
Well, in the case of the pipeline, we already have 5 conditions. I think there should be a 6th condition in the context of the greenhouse gas emissions impact of these proposed projects. There should be a mandatory assessment of every fossil fuel, every major industrial development proposal to understand the climate impacts, the increase in carbon emissions, and whether these projects will undermine our ability to meet our provincial greenhouse gas emissions targets. If that's the case, we would break the law, and we should not allow these projects to go ahead.
Jens, we'll have to leave it there, but we are going to be talking about the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline just after the 11 o'clock news, what's happened with that, and why people in Victoria will want to pay attention to this one, as it would result in a huge increase in tanker traffic in southern Vancouver Island. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Jens Wieting, forest and climate campaigner for the Sierra Club of